Welcome to this edition of CBN News Weekend. I'm Charlene Aaron. This week, Russian warplanes carried out airstrikes in Syria, a major escalation in the civil war that is fast becoming an international flashpoint. Russia is a longtime ally of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. The U.S. is backing rebel groups who seek to overthrow the Assad regime. In the midst of all of this, the militant Islamic State has captured large parts of Syria and Iraq and proclaimed itself a caliphate. Russia's presence in Syria may unleash even greater turmoil in the Middle East. Our experts Gary Lane, Chris Mitchell, and George Thomas got together to discuss the developments in an exclusive roundtable talk you won't find anywhere else.
Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, claims that he is doing this in order to go after terrorists, and has also said he wants to stabilize and protect Assad. What is the United States saying?
Well, of course, what Putin is saying, he's trying to make us believe that what he really wants is to go after ISIS. He wants us to believe that he's going after ISIS, but there's some indication, George, that he actually hit today non-ISIS groups, rebel groups that are fighting Assad. What he really wants is to keep Assad in power, or at least the family in power.
Chris, let me go to you. As Gary mentioned, in fact, the Associated Press is actually reporting that a moderate Western-backed Syrian rebel group says one of its leading officers has been killed in the Russian airstrikes happening in homes. As you know, Chris, ISIS is not in homes. Why is Russia going after homes? Why is it going after rebels that the CIA has been training and funding?
Well, I think, George, they're actually going to preserve the Assad regime. And I think there's two enemies they have. Certainly the forces that are against Assad. They want to preserve his regime. They want to preserve their holdings already in Syria. They have that port in Tartus and that Latakia in that region. They want to expand their influence. They do want to go after ISIS, but the war against ISIS is just a pretext in order to help them fight and protect Assad's regime.
Okay. Gary, as Chris mentioned, this is all about Bashar al-Assad.
Yes.
You know this very well. Russia has had a long-term relationship with Assad. Why?
With Assad's father, long before him.
Exactly. Hafez Assad, al-Assad. Why do the Russians want to protect Assad?
Well, because Assad's a friend of theirs, and also he's close to the Shiites, even though he's an Alawite. He is close to the Shiites, and of course the Russians have had long-time difficulties with the Sunnis, especially in Chechnya, as you know.
That's right.
Because you've been there. So it's not just helping Assad, it's coming against the Sunnis who have been fighting against Russia and want to radicalize Muslims in Russia and take over swaths of Russia. But also it's power and influence, George. Russia wants to have influence in the Middle East with the Arab states. Not only influence, but also it means a lot of money. Money for oil and gas and also natural resources.
Chris, this is the first time, to you, Chris, this is the first time that Russia has launched a military strike in the heart of the Middle East since the 1980s. Let me paint this picture for you. Iraq's prime minister has just come out saying that cooperation with Russia, Syria, and Iran is only for intelligence purposes. There is no military coordination between Russia, Syria, Iraq, and Syria. The fact that you have the Iranians in there, along with the Iraqis, coordinating with Russia, is this good?
Oh, I think it's very bad for the whole region, George. You know, just a few days ago, I think there was a relationship and alliance between Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, and Syria. And they said at the time, this is one of the biggest alliances in years, if not decades. The Middle East is shifting under our feet as we speak. And I have to say that I think you'd agree that this is because of a vacuum left by the United States of America. They had the opportunity to go in there years ago and do what they could against either the Assad regime when the Syrian civil war started or against ISIS in the last year or so. But they've been timid and they haven't had to use the power that they could have. And the allies in the region, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordanians, and the Egyptians, they all are terrified, I think, at what's happening right now by the lack of the U.S. leadership.
And you can watch the rest of that exclusive coverage by visiting our website, cbnnews.com. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to the United Nations, blasting the speech by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas at the UN on Wednesday. Abbas has said that he is no longer bound by deals made with Israel. He told world leaders Wednesday at the UN he no longer has to abide by the agreements that pave the road for a two-state solution with Israel. Abbas's statements came as the Palestinian state was allowed to raise its flag at the UN headquarters for the first time. Abbas promised the Palestinian flag will be raised soon in Jerusalem, referring to it as the capital of our Palestinian state. Turning to the U.S., news that the Pope Francis, met with Kentucky Clerk Kim Davis, is encouraging Americans concerned about the cause of religious liberty. Davis is just one person who stood up for her beliefs and suffered the consequences. A Washington state florist is also being punished for her faith. CBN's David Brody met with both of these courageous women to bring us their stories.
In the fight for religious liberty, two Christian women are standing out for their action and being considered heroes. Kim Davis, the Kentucky clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses to gay couples, and Baronelle Stutzman, a Washington state florist who would not sell flowers for a gay couple's wedding. Both paid a price for their stance. Davis went to jail. Stutzman faces lawsuits that could take her business and everything she owns.
Evangelical Christians see you as someone fighting the good fight. How do you see yourself?
Sinner saved by grace. Yeah, I'm not a hero and I'm not a martyr. I just try to be obedient.
Fortified by Christian support around the country and a meeting with Pope Francis, Davis says she's prepared to go back to jail if necessary.
Just people saying, that they've been encouraged, that their walk has been revived and they have been awakened and revived. And, I think, Lord, if this is all that comes of this, it's worth it, to get your church stirred and get the body of Christ revived and standing up again. And when I mean standing, I don't literally mean standing. I'm talking about standing on our knees in prayer, because that's where we do our fighting.
Critics call Davis a less than perfect messenger to defend traditional marriage. She's been divorced 3 times, but just recently gave her life to Jesus Christ. And she marvels at how God has used her.
You ever thought about that? Just how God is just using folks in all different ways, and folks that, it's all throughout the Bible, really.
I struggled with that myself. Why would God, of all people, choose me with my past to stand up and defend something that I had failed so miserably at in the world? And then I have to remember that I'm a new person, when I gave my life to Christ. His blood cleansed me, washed me clean, and the old has passed away, and the new stands in front of you. And I'm a very unlikely person to stand and to defend the Word of God.
Baronelle Stutzman warns Christians face a long fight because the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage is just the beginning of an assault on religious liberty.
I think it's going to get a lot worse. And it's just not, it's going to be attorneys that they say, you can practice law, but if you take a hate crime, then we're going to take your license. They can be television people like you that say, you can interview anybody or talk to anybody except for, and then you're off limits. So it's not just the florist or the baker. It's all the citizens. It's everybody's freedom. We're fighting for not just mine, but yours.
And that battle could be coming to a public square, a business, and a courtroom near you. David Brody, CBN News.
And as always, you can find more of David Brody's coverage through our website. His show, The Brody File, covers politics inside and outside the Capitol. Brody and his team work to bring you the exclusive coverage from newsmakers around the country. You can also follow them on Facebook and Twitter handle The Brody File to get updates as they happen. Well, recently at the same hotel where the Values Voters Summit was happening, an alarm was sounding about the flood of attacks on religious liberty across the country. Paul Strand was there.
Defenders of religious liberty like Senator Ted Cruz and the Liberty Institute's Kelly Shackelford brought real-life examples to Washington of Americans attacked for their faith.
The media likes to say the persecution of religious liberty. It's not real. It doesn't exist. They belittle it, they mock it.
But there was Navy Chaplain Wes Motter, who for months faced getting booted out of the Navy and losing his pension. He was charged with giving biblical answers while counseling sailors about premarital sex and homosexuality.
Frankly, it was very devastating for me, very emotional. I'm still a bit raw. I didn't know what the future was going to entail. I didn't know if I was going to have a job.
If chaplains can't answer biblical questions with biblical answers, we don't have chaplains.
And Liz Laverty was there, told by her public high school she couldn't have a Bible club at school.
I was denied because my principal said it was a Christian club and that it was illegal.
The only club that was denied was when she asked for a Christian club. I mean, there was a gay and lesbian club. There were all kinds of clubs.
These cases are happening all over the country. They are growing dramatically.
In the last 2 years alone, there's been over 133% increase in attacks on religious freedom in the United States.
But if people will stand and fight, they'll usually win. Liz's school relented and the club formed. The Navy cleared Motter, he's staying in, and the commander who attacked him is out.
We need to stand for religious liberty for everyone. It's everyone's right to have that in our country, and so I'm honored to have done my duty in holding the line.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, going, gone. Paul Strand takes us along as he follows the money, your taxpayer money. Welcome back to CBN News Weekend. Well, you may think the term use it or lose it has something to do with fitness, but when it comes to government, if you're a taxpayer, use it or lose it means get ready to see a lot of your taxpayer dollars wasted. Paul Strand brings us that story from Washington.
Libertarian Rand Paul can't stand big wasteful government and especially wasteful government spending, which is why he called this Senate hearing on end-of-the-year spending splurges. Government workers wasting cash they end up not needing for fear that if they don't spend it, Congress or their higher-ups might assume they don't need that money and so cut their next budget. Some both in and outside government feel it's almost insidious the way the government employees feel compelled to use it or lose it and spend any excess money they have left at the end of the fiscal year, rather than handing it back. These budget experts told Paul's committee most government workers hate use it or lose it, but all the incentives are to binge spend the bucks rather than reveal you didn't need them all.
A recent survey said that 95% of federal employees think year-end spending splurges are a problem and do exist.
Why do good people do that? I think it's because of the incentive to actually have to spend the money. Well, let's not blame the people. Let's change the incentives. And that's how we can correct the problem.
The experts suggested to the Senate committee rewarding government workers who save and return money rather than threatening them with reduced budgets for their conscientious saving. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Up next, it was the worst day of his life. Find out what the founder of Hillsong Church shared with us in Studio 5 after this. Well, if your church sings worship music, chances are there are a few tunes from Hillsong on the congregation's lips every Sunday. The Australian church has provided the soundtrack for churches around the world for many years. And that work is more than a dream come true for Brian Houston, who started the church decades ago with only a few dozen members. But it hasn't always been an easy journey. Houston recently sat down with our Ephraim Graham in Studio 5 to talk about the ups and downs of living, loving, and leading.
It's the power of love.
More than 20,000 people attend services at Hillsong Church on any given Sunday, with campuses in Sydney, Kiev, Moscow, New York City, London, Cape Town, Paris, and so many more. And leading the worldwide flock is global pastor Brian Houston, who shares some of the journey in his book, Live, Love, Lead.
Why this book? What made you want to write this book?
Well, I think the book's been in my heart for a long time. I have been pastoring for 32 years, same church, 40 years preaching and ministering, and I just felt like there was a lot in me I wanted to use to help other people, equip other people. So the timing right now just seemed to be the right time. I had the time to actually write the book, and so Live, Love, Lead, that's where I am.
Houston and his wife Bobby first started Hillsong in 1983, meeting in a school hall and then a warehouse with only 45 members. It grew to 900 people in 4 years, and continues to multiply.
This church isn't the church you started 40 years ago.
That's for sure. No, we started in a little school hall in the outer suburbs of Sydney. In those days, it was like green fields where we were, and we're in a small hall, as I say, and it is an amazing story. I mean, it's a miracle.
Did you envision this? I remember reading, and you and your wife dating in a car that backs down into someone's house, essentially, because you forget to put it in park. Is this what you guys talked about all those years ago?
We really could not have imagined all that God has done. We both, my wife and I, both grew up in New Zealand. The story you're talking about in the book is our neighbour who used to go to the tiny little Assemblies of God church we went to, had a very steep drive, and so we were parked at the top of their drive and just talking about the future and planning, and yeah, you got to read the book to see the rest. But I've got to tell you that we did have in our heart to serve God and to believe to do something significant, but the grace of God has been something we could never have perceived.
What's been the toughest part of those 40 years for you?
Well, I talk in the book about the worst day of my life. I was 45, it was in 1999. My father was my absolute hero. In fact, he was one of my great inspirations in terms of what I do today. And at 45, one of the guys who works for me came into my office, and we went through our normal list of things to talk about. And at the end, he said, there's just one more thing. And so the way he said it, the tone, I knew something was wrong. And he told me that we'd had a complaint come in that many years before that, probably in the 1970s, that my father had abused a young man. So, yeah, I mean, you couldn't hit me with worse news. It sort of hit me in layers. And so I had to confront my own father and ask him about that. So that definitely is the worst day of my life.
How did that resolve itself? I can't even imagine navigating that.
I don't know whether it has resolved itself as such. My father now has been dead for over 10 years, but the ramifications of that are still playing out right now.
What lessons did God allow that to teach you?
You know, one thing I do know is it wasn't me. I didn't do anything wrong. It was my father. And, you know, in the world we live, there's some people who would love to try and frame me by my father's sin. But I refused to let that happen. But I guess it helped me to realise that everyone has their issues, has their battle, whatever that is. And that's why I think everyone is a perfect recipient for the gospel of Jesus, the grace of God.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders.
And with more than 40 recordings to their credit, music is a Hillsong signature. Their contemporary Christian praise songs are the Sunday soundtrack for churches around the world.
When many people think of Hillsong before they even think of the church and your ministry now, the music is so far-reaching. What do you think? I mean, are you a musician? What do you?
I was the church drummer when I was a teenager. But compared with the people today, no, I'm not a musician. But I always had a heart to pastor the kind of church that was an inspiration to churches. I'm a great believer in the potential of the church, and I mean the local church. And so I always kind of wanted to have a church where we wrote and sung songs that helped the church. And so it's an amazing thing because being through various personalities over all these years, but really from the start, it seems the songs from our church struck a chord with people, firstly in Australia, obviously, and then globally. And it's been a miracle story. Someone once said to me, Brian, you realise this is only a season. They're talking about the impact of the worship from Hillsong. And I agree, it's only a season, but so far it's been a very long season.
Happy birthday, Ava!
Up next, find out what, that is who, CBN News is celebrating and how you can join the fun. A mom in Colorado Springs is sending out a nationwide birthday card request for her 3-year-old daughter. The toddler has a disease that makes celebrating with a party almost impossible. Meet Ava Graziano.
See, my birthday card.
She looks and acts like a normal 3-year-old. But Ava was born with a deadly and rare birth defect called congenital diaphragmatic hernia, or CDH. She was born with no diaphragm on her right side and little to no lungs, and the slightest cold could put her life in danger. 1 in every 2,500 babies is diagnosed with CDH, and only 50% survive. Ava was given only a 13% chance to live. Despite those odds, Ava turns 3 next week.
They basically said she was a rock star. They actually called her the rock star.
I was a baby.
We can't have a birthday party for her like a normal child. We have to be very cautious and careful with social interactions.
Instead of throwing a party, Graziano is asking for cards and letters for Ava's birthday on October the 8th.
It's been really hard because I want her to have a normal life. But it's hard when people treat her differently.
Graziano tried to throw a birthday party for Ava last year, but no one showed up.
I think a lot of it stems from people fear what they don't understand. People have physically removed their children from being near her or playing with her because they're afraid of her feeding tube or her G-tube. They don't understand, you know, she's just a little girl.
When we here at CBN News heard Ava's story, we decided to join in helping to make her birthday very special.
Happy birthday, Ava!
And we hope you do the same. For information on where to send Ava's cards, log on to cbnnews.com and make sure you send a card soon. Her birthday is October 8th. Well, that's all for this hour of CBN News Weekend. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com and stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter. We'll hope you join us next time. Have a wonderful weekend and God bless you.